So welcome to Carpool Conversations, where our goal is to equip parents to have meaningful Christ-centered conversations. I am Sarah Jones.
And I am Marissa Ray, and today we'll be talking about encouraging your kids to discuss their feelings.
Yeah, Marissa, let me just tell you, we've got a lot of feelings in our house. I don't know about you, but 1 minute we're real high highs and some low lows.
Yes.
I am overly excited. We have a really special guest to help us navigate this, and expert. I would call him an expert. He's done a lot of work for Win-Shaped Marriage, and now we're going to get to learn from him today. So tell us who our guest is.
Yes, I would love to. We have with us today Dr. Josh Straub. Josh and his wife, Christi, have devoted their lives to helping other parents raise their children to love and follow Jesus. He is most renowned for his role as a husband and dad. And Josh is a speaker, author, marriage and leadership coach, and a podcast and TV co-host. He and his wife, Christi, lead Famous at Home, a company equipping leaders and corporations in emotional intelligence and healthy family systems. They also co-wrote a series of children's books to help foster emotional awareness in kids called What Am I Feeling? What Do I Do with Anger? And What Do I Do with Worry? And so, Josh, we're so excited to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor. I don't know about the word expert, but we learn as we go, trial by fire. So
yeah, well, just any wisdom you've got, we'll take.
Yes,
okay,
for sure. As Sarah said, lots of feelings in her house. I have a 2-year-old toddler, so we have just entered like the big feelings stage. So yes, we're here to learn.
Those are some big feelings too.
I know, and people are like, "Oh, you're in the terrible twos," and I'm like, "Actually, it's not so terrible. I don't know why you keep calling them terrible twos." And then they turn 3, and they're like, "Oh, the three-nagers." Like, it's real. So
yeah, I feel like the 3 is where it really starts to amp up more than the 2s. At least that's been our experience, and it's been our experience. I mean, again, this is all our experience, but we've also experienced it more with our boys than with our daughter. And so I think, there could be a gender component to that. But here's the reality is it's real. So I think, one of the things that as we were getting started there and you guys were talking, I can imagine, like I'm imagining the carpool conversation. I'm imagining sitting there in the carpool and you're just going, it's so easy. I see so many parents today, especially moms, who are sitting in shame because their kid's acting out and losing their ever-loving mind. And I'm like, do not judge your quality of who you are as a parent based upon your child losing their ever-loving mind, because their mind is not fully developed at that age and everyone is experiencing it. So I just want to take the shame out of the conversation as we get started, because parenting is the most, I believe, shaming, guilt-ridden role on the planet. And it's already that without having to jump on, without having social media and jumping on Instagram and comparing yourself to every other parent who's doing amazing on Instagram, but behind closed doors is really struggling. And so I just want to start off by that is just going, if you're listening to this podcast right now, I guarantee you're crushing it as a parent.
Yeah. Amen. I have experienced the grocery store embarrassment, and I've had to say, you know what? I am not going to be embarrassed. Like, I'm shepherding this child's heart. That's right. We are learning. This is my first time parenting a toddler. And so I'm learning. Yeah. Remove the embarrassment. Amen. Everything you just said. Josh, thank you so much for being with us. I need to know, what is your favorite thing about this stage of parenting that you're in? And tell me about your kids.
Yeah. So, man, there's a lot of favorites. I genuinely say, like, I can genuinely state this. Like, I genuinely believe that parenting is probably, it is my favorite role on the planet. Like, I love it more than anything else that I do. Are there moments that I'm like, this is overwhelming? Yes. We have a 13-year-old son, Landon. We have an 11-year-old daughter, Kennedy, and we have a 5-year-old boy named Micah. And so there's an age gap there for a reason, 13, 11, and 5, because our first 2 were very difficult. I'm talking like God humbled us in the very thing that he called us to, so we wouldn't pull our britches up too high acting like we had it all together. Like, it was like Christi, my wife, she had back injury in college that really was re-aggravated through pregnancy and having babies. And so she was crippled in many ways in those early years. She had illnesses. She was basically sick for 8 months of the pregnancy, like flu-like symptoms. Like it wasn't just morning sickness, it was all day, every day. So she never had the pregnancy glow. The babies cried all through the night, colic, acid reflux. Still have no idea what colic is to this day. I just know we never slept. And it was really, really difficult. And then we get through, this is a very long story short, but there was a moment where a few years after we got out of some of those early rough survival years, where Christi had it prophesied over her in a couple different settings that she was going to have another baby and it was going to be a boy. And she fought God on it for 2 years. Like, I'm not doing this. I'm not, like, no, I can't put my body through that. And really, really cool story. She ultimately learned in her life that you never tell God no. And we just learned a bunch of different things, and God redeemed all of her pregnancy, redeemed the sleep, redeemed everything with Micah, our 5-year-old now. So he's amazing, a blessing. God redeemed so much of that whole journey for us. And it was battle fought. It was tested at times. And so we're still in some of the boy, prefrontal cortex not being fully developed, temper tantrums, frustration tolerance being just over, and so if he doesn't get his way. And so we're back in that. We have that stage going on. And then I also have the influence coaching side of parenting with our 13 and 11-year-old. And so I'm kind of in both right now. And I love it because the longer that you raise your kids, it's like you start with a lot of control over your kids. And then as they age, you're losing more control over them and you're gaining more influence in their life. And so it's really cool to be able to let my hands off a little bit of the control with the older two as I start to, like, they're in jiu-jitsu. And so there's a lot of conversation around, eating and strength and like all of the things of testing. Like we purposely have land and live on a homestead for them to be able to be resourceful and have things to do outside. And we're very strategic about the decisions we're making with our kids because we have to be countercultural and get outside the matrix that is the Western world in order to raise great kids. Because I just think that the Western world is set up in such a way, especially with technology and social media and all the things, that's keeping us stuck in anxiety and depression and all these things as a culture. I'm speaking culturally and generally. And so we're trying the best we can to choose what will build confidence and resourcefulness in our kids. And so as a result, there's this kind of support challenge that's happening right now, where we have to come alongside and support them, but I'm also pushing them out and challenging them. And I think that letting go of control, but offering more influence and exploration is probably my favorite part of being a parent right now. Very long story to answer that question, but
thanks for sharing a little bit about that and what your favorite phase of parenting is. But we would love to just hear a little bit about your books that you and your wife, Christi, have written. Y'all have written a series of books to help kids name and navigate their emotions, starting with What Am I Feeling? What inspired you both to take on this topic, and why do you think it's so important for families today?
Yeah, what inspired us originally to do this was because we saw a lot of, it's similar to what Pete Scazzaro talks about in Emotionally Healthy Church, Emotionally Healthy Spirituality, is that you're only going to be as emotionally mature as you are spiritually mature. So in other words, you're not going to grow in emotions if you're not growing spiritually. And so we really wanted our children, if they're growing spiritually, they're growing emotionally. Like the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. We see a lot of adults who you look at their lives and you go, man, like where, Jesus said this, you shall know them by their fruit. You will know them by their fruit. And I think for each of us as parents is to really identify in ourselves, as you said earlier, our kids become who we are. You can sum up all of parenting research into that one primary conclusion. our kids become who we are, which is why it's important that we pay attention to what we're feeling. And so I wrote a book in 2015 called Safe House, Why Emotional Safety is the Key to Raising Kids Who Live, Love, and Lead Well. I really wanted to start to figure out what will really make the most difference when we've raised our kids. Like, because there's so many quote unquote parenting decisions, and there's so many things that you filter through to get the outcomes that you desire in your kids. And throughout the research, I just found this one phrase keep coming up over and over and over again, and that's emotional safety. Do our kids experience emotional safety in all of their struggles and all of their moments of overwhelm, nervous system overwhelm, fight or flight? Are they experiencing emotional safety? And it's linked to every major outcome, from getting good grades to extracurricular activities, all that sort of thing, but also into adulthood. Do they get a job that they love and stick to a career that they love? Do they have adult friendships, the quality of their adult friendships? Do they get married, stay married, and enjoy their marriage? Forget just even staying married, but do they have high marital satisfaction? All of these things are linked, even to a faith that sticks. Every single one was linked to this idea of emotional safety. And so I wrote this book on it, and it did fairly well. But what we realized is that parents will buy more books for their kids rather than for themselves.
Yeah.
And so we wanted really to teach the kids emotional awareness, and it was an opportunity for parents to, rather than just teaching parents about emotional safety, it was a way to put emotional safety in their hand with their children without having to take the time to read about it. And so we started with What Am I Feeling? It's got a pull out feelings chart poster in the back that it's perforated. You can hang it in your kid's bedroom. And then we proceeded to really put out a series of books. What do I do with anger? What do I do with worry? We started to look at what are some of the more common emotions. And then we actually even did a devotional on 10 Days of the Easter Story. And it's a journey through the feelings of Holy Week, and looks at the characters of Holy Week and what they were feeling, because the amount of feelings that these people were feeling in Holy Week, it takes those stories and brings them to real life, where you see them wrestling with true emotion.
I love that, because when I became a parent, I realized I had to do my own emotion work. Early on, you talked about the prefrontal cortex. Like, in a child, that is not developed until 25. Is that correct?
That's correct, which is why rental car companies are smarter than politicians.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. So, I mean, my brain was developed, and I was parenting a child who had crazy emotions. And my husband, who is a therapist, he was like, it's like holding up a mirror. Like, when the child has a meltdown, you're melting down because you don't know what to do. Like, you got to do your own emotional work. Like, we aren't going to give the most immature family member the remote control. Like, you are the parent.
Yes.
I'm like, okay, you're so right. Like, I have to do my own emotional work.
But the scary part about that is what iPads, we live in an iPad generation now. And let's be honest, like in our overwhelming moments as parents, we're now giving them the iPad because it helps be able to, soothe them, calm them down, all those sorts of things. And it's like, but yet we're really not doing ourselves a favor, because all we're doing is making we're just pushing the ball further down the court in a way that's not helpful.
Yeah.
And so, but I'll go back to the shame conversation in the beginning. It's hard, and it's hard to do the right thing in the moment because it is overwhelming. We are exhausted. And I think it's really important to go, at the same time, you are the parent. So you do have, first of all, number one, we need to learn to not. So let's talk about the emotions work. We need to not take it personally. Mm-hmm. Like, it is not your fault that your child's prefrontal cortex is not fully developed and that they're losing their ever-loving mind in frustration with a lack of frustration tolerance in that very moment. But it's not personal. It's also not personal when your 14-year-old looks at you and says, "Dad, I hate you because you didn't let her do the thing that you wanted her to do." Like, no, there's something deeper going on within our children that we have to pay attention to and have the ability to be able to lead in grace and then follow in truth. Jesus always led in grace and then followed in truth. So for example, the woman at the well, the woman caught in adultery, he always entered people's stories to have a calming effect on, like, think of the woman at the well for a second. Even Peter, after he's betrayed Jesus, right? Think of the fear. Let's just go to the woman at the well. The woman at the well is in so much fear that she doesn't even in broad daylight go to where everybody else is. She privately goes to the well by herself where she won't be seen because of fear and shame. By the end of the conversation, he has entered into her story and made her feel so loved, but he also told her the truth about who he was. He says, go sin no more now. But she felt so seen, her fear and shame, her fight or flight response, her nervous system was so calmed down in that moment that she didn't care anymore. She ran straight into the very people she was trying to avoid to tell them everything because it wasn't about her anymore. And I think as parents, we want to be able to receive the same from the Father. We love because he first loved us. We experience his love, and out of his love, we can be strong enough to gracefully enter our child's world, gracefully enter their overwhelm, what's really going on behind the 14-year-old's disrespect, what's really going on behind the 3-year-old's temper tantrum, and be able to have a calming effect on the brain so that they can think straight, so that they can then, but truth without grace, John Townsend writes this, that truth without grace will always be received as condemnation. And so we want to make sure that because a lot of times we parent the way our parents parented us, and we'll go the opposite. We'll just be like, don't you do that, right? We don't even think about why we're leading in truth, but we do it because our parents did it. Or we do the opposite. We do because we don't like the way our parents treated us. And so we do the exact opposite, but we do that without even thinking about it. And to your point, I think it's really important that we do our own emotional work to be able to understand why it is that we're reacting, if we're reacting rather than responding to our children.
Yeah, that's good. The iPad society that we live in, I had that as a toddler. I mean, parenting a toddler, they were having a meltdown, and I don't even know what I was thinking. I was like, here's a video, like, stop crying. I don't want to hear that. And my husband so sweetly said, our children will never learn how to regulate their emotions if you just put a video in front of them. Like, that is not a fix. That is going to backfire on you. And so I stopped from that day on. I was like, I will never do that again. And we don't even have iPads. We're not a screen family, but for families that are, I mean, if they're having a meltdown, the last thing you need to do is put a video in front of them. Like, let them work through that. Like, yeah.
And it's going to be hard as a parent. Like, it is hard. Like, if you are getting a little bit more lax with it, and I'll be honest, I mean, we've gotten lax with it with our 5-year-old because he's got 2 older siblings who are doing homeschool, and they need iPads for some of the homeschooling work. And so there are times where he would get on an iPad and they would watch, he's like, Dad, can I watch Daniel Tiger or something? And we're like, sure, you can watch Daniel Tiger. But what ends up happening is if you get too lax with it, you will begin to see, like, the frustration tolerance just go even lower. You'll see temper tantrums even more. And at some point we have to, as parents, going, stop blaming our children for the decision, for our lack, for our, the way that we're doing these things. And I'll just say this, people, especially in those early years, cold turkey, just take it. Like, just take it away. And you will see a difference. Give it a few days. As long as you're shepherding and entering into their world, like, enter into their world in grace, shepherd them well, ask them what they want to do. By the way, 20 minutes of command-free time a day with your children is gold for their brain. That means you enter into their world for 20 minutes and do what they want to do. You don't dictate the play. You let them guide the play, and it is gold for a child's brain. And so a lot of times, though, if they're frustrating or they're losing their minds, we just want to get away from them. That's when they need us most.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. I'm guilty, and I've had to enter into the space. It's like, this is so hard, but I'm going. Also, I'd rather give my kid an axe and tell him to go chop down a tree than to give him a video game because I have seen
100%.
what happens to him. Okay.
Time and time again. Listen, broken bones will heal.
Yes.
Right? Broken bones will heal. But man, what it takes to heal, you wire a child's brain for relationships, they'll become wired for relationships. You wire them for screens, they become wired for screens. And what we want to be very careful of in this next generation is look, and again, I have a PhD in counseling, so like I'm not against therapy in any way, shape, or form. However, what we have to realize is that we live in a culture where we know more about psychology and we know more about all of these things than we've ever known before. And yet, if you look at the data, our next generation is more depressed and anxious than they've ever been before.
Yeah.
So you have to start asking the question, what's really going on? And so I think it's really important that we, as parents, shepherd our kids really well with being able to label their emotions, enter into their world. And I think screens are a major part. I don't think there's one cause for what's going on, but I think screens are a massive majority of what's created that anxiety and depression.
Spot on. Yeah. So Marissa mentioned this in your book. You have a feelings chart. And I remember like step 1 early on, we printed out a feelings chart. My children could not read, but they could identify on a chart what they were really like to name it, to move through it. But how can a chart like that actually help kids understand and express their emotions in really just everyday life? And how does this work with older kids? Like that was step 1 for me. What would step 2 for older kids be?
Yeah, great question. So I think step 1 is where you really start to. Well, let me start by saying this. This afternoon, I will be doing a marriage intensive. We do marriage intensives through Famous at Home, and in those marriage intensives, one of the things that I will constantly come around on is that when we get in our pain cycles in our marriage, is the reason we get into those pain cycles is because there is a deeper core feeling that's happening when we feel criticized, when we feel like your husband gently said to you, about the iPad, let's just say screens are an easy one. Let's just say your spouse says, are you going to join me or get off your phone or right? Like you've been on your phone too much. Like it pricks something in us. And our reaction to our spouse, what is that criticism pricking within you? And how are you coping in that? How are you reacting to your spouse? Are you receiving the criticism? Most of the time it's doing something within us. Well, that feeling goes all the way back to childhood. Like there is an inner little boy and an inner little girl that is being hurt, and then we have these crazy ways that we try to get our spouse to love us deeper by using sarcasm, passive aggressive, sighing, right? We slam doors, whatever it is. But it's like those are the ways that we have learned to cope with our inner little boy and little girl feelings that we've never really processed or felt vulnerable or safe enough to share. So you asked about older kids. What about older, middle-aged kids who are just trying to figure life out in their own marriages, right? So starting all the way down to toddlerhood, we have this feelings chart. And I'll never forget Kennedy, our daughter. We were at a friend's house and there was a bunch of different friends there. And she came home that day. She's our sweet little girl. Like we call her sweet girl. Like she was the one that never really had the temper tantrums in the early years and whatnot. And so, but this particular day we get back from our friends and she was disobedient, disrespectful. And of course, as average parents, we're just kind of going, stop it, knock it off. You know better than to act that way. We're just kind of getting through the day. And finally that night, Christi was sitting in bed with her and she pulled out the feelings chart and she said, Kennedy, today was an off day for you. Like we use the word off with our kids because a lot of times we can't necessarily identify what it is we're feeling, but we know we feel off. And so we'll just, today was an off day. Can you tell me what you were feeling? And Kennedy's little finger moved from, it first went to anger, like she was angry. And then Christi said, well, anger. So in our book, What Do I Do with Anger? We talk about that anger is a secondary emotion. So what's under that emotion is usually something deeper. And so, her little finger, she said, well, is there anything else besides anger? And Kennedy's little finger moved from anger to sad. She felt sad. And Christy said, was there anything else? And then she moved to embarrassed. And Christy asked her, she said, did something happen today to make you feel embarrassed? And when we were at our friend's house, there were other families and there were two other little girls the same age. And the friend's house we were at, that girl, obviously her bedroom was there. And those two little girls wanted to play by themselves. So they went into the bedroom and left Kennedy and closed the door and left Kennedy in the hallway so they could play by themselves for a little while. And Kennedy felt rejected, embarrassed. Now that feeling is coming out sideways and it looks like disrespect and disobedience to us as parents if we are living such busy lives that we don't take the time to be able to enter in and get behind what is really going on. And that was one moment for us where it was like, oh, wow, like this is this is really, really important. And so even sitting with them when you see that they're off and not just assuming that it's disobedience or disrespect, but what is actually going on underneath there? I'll give this, I was thinking of this 14-year-old earlier, so I'll jump to the older kids. We, and again, I deal with this all the time with jiu-jitsu, our son in particular, where it's like, he's angry, he's coming out of practice mad, or he's coming out in tears. And so we get to talk about that. Like, for example, I'll give you this example, then I'll jump to the 14-year-old girl. For example, like, he was injured and he could really only go about 70% in practice. So I was like, just tell your coach you're only going to go 70%. Well, he's only going 70% with the other kids. So he's getting beat. And so he's feeling embarrassed that he's getting beat, even though he knows he has another 30% in him. And I'm like, buddy, it's about the drills. It's about the practice. Like it doesn't, but for him, he was personalizing it as being embarrassed because he was losing all the time in practice while he's recovering from an injury, as opposed to, it being, hey, I'm recovering. It's okay that I lose. The reps are important. And so it's even helping them process those emotions and understanding the why behind what the process looks like. But there was a dad of a 14-year-old that I was working with, and his daughter wanted to go to a Friday night football game, and her dad said no. And she looked at him and she said, Dad, I hate you. And so I want you to think about as a parent, if you're listening, like what your initial reaction would be. Like some of us are going to be, and I use this example as like, what does emotional safety mean and look like? It's a posture. It's not a technique. The posture of emotional safety will never change throughout your parenting. Techniques, they come and go. One technique that works on one child might not work on another child. And one technique that works today on one child might not work tomorrow on that child. Techniques are usually also one-way street. They're not engaging our child's brain in conversation. And so, but the posture of emotional safety, it rewires a child's brain for a relationship. And so it will never change whether your kids are 2, 14, or 54. And so the thing that the posture of emotional safety for this dad is not going, don't you ever speak to me that way again. You go to your room, I'm taking your phone for a month, and no, you're not going to that Friday night football game. Do you understand me? Like we just like, that's leading in truth, right? But that's when we take it personally as a parent, that can be our reaction. It's also not dismissing it and being like, it's just a Friday night football game. Who cares? Or minimizing it. Like, don't be mad at me. Like these would be our other reactions. The posture of emotional safety is our ability to, in that moment, enter into her world and say, honey, what is it about that Friday night football game that matters to you so much? This is a major overreaction. We use this a lot with our kids. That was a 10 reaction for something that probably should have been about a 2. Right? What else is going on behind it? And what that dad found out was that his daughter had been rejected by a group of friends that she previously hung out in the previous school year. And she would see them posting pictures on Instagram and Snapchat of them hanging out without her. And this was the first Friday night they invited her to be a part of something. And her dad said no. So often what's happening is we don't want to take this personally, because it's something that's happening in our child's world, and we have to separate ourselves from what's going on in our child's world. he can address the disrespect later, but that's not going to land well if she hasn't first been heard and seen and understood.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I have a 2-year-old, as I said earlier, and we've seen a lot of just big emotions coming out lately because we also have a 5-month-old. And so our 2-year-old has now started to feel, like, well, I don't get all of mommy's attention. Like, mommy's holding baby brother, but not holding me. And we started to see a lot of that. Like, he was, so happy one moment, and then the next moment, like throwing his toys and things like that. And I don't remember where we read it or something, but along these same lines you're talking about, like, hey, I need to just like sit with him and be present in what he's feeling for a moment and address later, like, okay, you can't throw anything, because that was his best way of letting me know, like, mommy, I want you right now and I need you. And so I just love you're putting so many words to, I think, what, at least for my husband and I, we are walking through with our 2-year-old, like, we just need to like have grace and step into what he's feeling right now and sit there with him. Let what needs to happen come later, but we need to let him know that we're there and we're present. So I'm being so encouraged by what you're sharing, because it really does make a difference. Like, whenever you're willing to stop and pause and be like, okay, what is actually going on here? But our true reactions are not that. Like, it's like, okay, well, get it together. You were okay. So, yeah.
I know you have a question, but also, like, I want to point out, am I a safe place to express your emotions? Like, have I created an environment, or a matrix, as you call it, where it's a safe place, like, for you to come to me? Like, am I trusted?
You know what's wild is I have come to a place where, and it was something you just said there, I study all this data. I'm in the research. I'm looking at the world around us, and I see my kids, and I've come to a place where I think that I have narrowed my parenting down into two primary benchmarks. That if I can get these two benchmarks right, that I think I will have gotten it right. And that is, number one, am I safe enough with my children that they can bring me their sin, their challenges, and their warfare, their stuff throughout their lives? That they know they feel safe enough to come to me with that stuff. And that's the first thing to think about is I need to go talk to my dad about that.
Yes.
Because I think what it does is it creates, number one, that there's someone that they can go talk to about it, and we don't keep secrets. And then number two, it becomes a reflection of them learning how to go to their Heavenly Father with it. The second thing is that, was I a joyful dad? Because fear there's a trickle down effect of fear. Epigenetics is way stronger than genetics when it comes to parenting. In other words, the environment that we're raising our kids in, the beliefs that we have, the way that we handle situations. And I don't see a lot of joyful kids in the world around me today. And I think that if we really want to live out of the fruit of joy, we have to be joyful as parents. And so if I want to raise joyful kids, it starts with me. And so am I safe enough, and am I joyful? And I think those are the two primary benchmarks that I have really come to identify as a father, that I really want to keep growing in.
That's so good. It's relational. I hear this play in my head a lot. Children that are delighted in are delightful. And so.
So good.
Relationship.
Such a great statement.
First.
Yeah. I love that. Well, Josh, you often talk about how emotions and faith go hand in hand. So we're talking a lot about, our emotions, and you said, you're a data person, but we know that also this is all mixed together with our faith. And so how can parents help their kids learn to invite God into what they're feeling, whether it's anger, worry, sadness, or even joy?
Yeah, I think Philippians 4, Paul gives us a great model for this. I think he understood the brain way before we had neuroscience. In Philippians 4, he says, first of all, it says, the Lord is near. The Lord is present. He's with us. Therefore, be anxious for nothing, but in everything, every circumstance, with thanksgiving. So let's make sure we're paying attention to what this verse says. With thanksgiving, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving. So prayer and petition, make your request known to God. So be anxious for nothing. There's a world in which we can go into prayer and meditate on our anxiety and come out of prayer and be more anxious than when we went in. And Christians will go, well, we don't believe in meditation. We don't believe in meditation. Well, you meditate all of the time. You're meditating on something. And when we go into prayer, there's times where we're like, God, I'm so anxious. I'm so scared about my finances. I'm so scared about my kids and how they're going to turn out. I'm so scared about my job. I'm so scared about this person and what they think of me. I'm so scared of, and then we go, God, would you just help me in that? Would you fix all of this? Amen. And we come out and we're more anxious. And we're just like, well, wait a second here. We're not looking at the scriptures correctly to go by prayer and petition with thanksgiving. So when I go into prayer, I say, Heavenly Father, I thank you that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I thank you that as you take care of the birds of the air, how much more you take care of me. I thank you that you love me with an everlasting love. I thank you that though I walk through the valley of shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. I thank you for my standing in you, God. Now, there's these things that I am feeling right now. So, God, silence the enemy, quiet my thoughts, give me the mind of Christ, and show me what I need to know about this sadness. Show me what I need to know about this fear. Show me what I need to know about this. And the way we train our kids in this is we just say, hey, write down the first thing that comes to your mind. If you believe that God has answered the prayer to silence the enemy, to quiet your thoughts, to give you the mind of Christ, and he's given you the mind of Christ, then write the first thing that comes down. What do you want me to know about this fear? Write it down and just see. Let's just follow through it. And this is how we journey with our kids, right? Like, what are we hearing from God as we filter it through the lens of Scripture? What do we feel like he's saying? What does we feel like he's having us do? And so we're teaching them what it looks like to take their requests to God, because then it says, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, keeps your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. It's not until that point, if you take a look at it, that he says, finally, brothers and sisters, anything that is pure, true, holy, anything excellent, praiseworthy, what does he say? Think on such things. He doesn't say think on these things and then take your anxiety to God in prayer. I think Paul understood that when we're anxious and overwhelmed, we can't think straight. And that it's going to God himself with thanksgiving, recognizing and speaking the truth about who we are in him, that peace calms our brain to get us to think straight. And I think even as parents, in a finite way, God has positioned us in a finite way to help be a peace that calms our children's brains, to help them to think straight when they're going through difficult situations.
That's good. We just talked about being lost in the wilderness with our kids. Like, we were outside with them. Like, we were coaching them. What if you got lost? What is step one? And to hear them like talk through what is step one. And my husband's like, actually, step one is to stay calm. Like, don't panic. I feel that in parenting. It's like, okay, step one, poker face and stay calm. Like, you've got this.
It's so good. And it's in every area of our lives. This is why I talk about emotional safety, not just being a parenting. It is the hub of the wheel for everything we do. So whether we talk about marriage, parenting, executive leadership coaching, it is the hub of the wheel, because you will not be creative when you're living in fight or flight.
No.
You've got to be, and you won't find your way out of the woods if you're lost, if you're in fight or flight.
Data shows. Your
husband's point.
You cannot think clearly. You just can't. You can't make decisions clearly either. So, woo, that's so good. So, okay, do you have a moment from your own parenting journey where you saw one of your kids really like get it? This whole emotion thing, and like maybe a breakthrough of like naming or managing their emotions that you would want to share with the listeners?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think Kennedy, that one early on where she was, with their, I would definitely say that one. I mean, we have so many. I mean, our son with jiu-jitsu and our daughter does jiu-jitsu. She's 11 years old and she's like out there in the mat. I was like, I never would have thought she'd be out there doing these things. She's our feeler. They're all feelers, our kids. And I think all kids are feelers. I think we have to identify that. We do have to pay attention that some tend to wear their feelings in their sleeves more than others, but we can't ignore all of our kids, even if we don't see them as quote unquote feelers. I would say for her, as she's gotten older, some of the aha moments that we've had with her as we've navigated her feelings are, for a while, if she were in tutorials and she were around friends, because I'm telling you, like, peer friendships are something that as parents, we have to pray over. We have to be diligent in and discerning of, and especially when they're in peer relationships with peers who have different tech rules with their parents than we decide that we have. So I think there's such a value discrepancy in our culture today because of screens, that our kids can be exposed to things that we would have never been, when I was a kid. And so at earlier ages, I should say. And so we saw her beginning to go with the flow a little more. Our son's more of a leader. He's firstborn. She's secondborn. So she was more of a follower, and her emotions were a lot tied up in what her friends thought. So go back to that early situation where she's left out of the room with her friends. We saw her starting to fit in, trying to fit in more and becoming less of herself. Mm-hmm. And so we really started, my wife took the lead on this for sure, but really started to enter into her world and I think this is important for all of us as parents to identify and see in our kids, is we started helping as she's in her feels. We call it, she's in her feels, and she now does that too. Like when she's in her feels, like we will simply ask, what is the feel? What are you feeling? And we'll start to follow that into what is the core underlying emotion that you're experiencing. And for her, it was this sense of inclusion, being included and fitting in. And of course, we all want that.
Yeah. Josh, I was going to say, I'm 40 years old and I still,
yes.
if you don't get the invite, you're still navigating. It's like, man, that hurt.
Sense of rejection. And
yes.
That's where, and this is why I'm bringing this one up, is because if you've allowed your kids on screens and social media and they're now 13, 14 years old and you're trying to take it away cold turkey, you can take the iPad away cold turkey with your toddlers. It's much harder to do that with your 13 and 14-year-olds because why? All of their social relationships are on that device. And you're now all of a sudden not just taking a screen from them, you're taking their closest relationships from them.
Their connection.
So connection. It's a very different conversation if we've gone there with them at an earlier age. And so we have to be aware of that as parents, to your point.
Yeah.
So, but again, that requires us to influence rather than control, right? So now we can influence. And again, our kids don't have cell phones. We won't give cell phones. We'll follow a lot of the Jonathan Haidt, if you're familiar with Jonathan Haidt, Next Generation. We will follow and we've always been down that train. We've always been on that train. We'll delay it as long as possible. We will, but my point is that coming back to Kennedy, our daughter, with that is it opens up great discipleship opportunities, because now all of a sudden you can have conversation about who are you trying to fit in with, right? Like 1 Corinthians 15 says that bad company corrupts good character. Are those people, do they have the character that you like? Tell me about their behavior. Mm-hmm. Tell me about the jokes they're telling. Tell me about the way they're talking about people. Tell me about, I want to know more about this person so that I can tell, is this going to be a good influence for you or a not healthy influence for you? And let's have that conversation. So then all of a sudden we're having conversation about, well, I don't know if I want to fit in there. Yeah. Well, I don't know if I want to fit in there. Right. Because God made you to stand out. Right. To be holy means to be separated, to be separate, to stand apart. Right. And so now what does that mean for you? What do you value, and how do you start living that out? And so for us, these have been ongoing aha moments for our daughter that have helped her individually understand she's a leader, not a follower, but she's a leader based upon how God views her and who she is in him, as opposed to what friends around her will think. And of course, the social relationships are important, but it helps disciple them into what social relationships should she be saying yes to, as opposed to, oh, I feel so bad for myself because I don't fit in there. When the reality is you go, I really don't want to fit in there anyway. Yeah. Like, that's not who I want to be with. So if that's helpful,
That's awesome. Yeah, so good.
That's so helpful. My mom always told me to choose my friends wisely. And that's something that I feel like I will forever carry in my mind, just going along that same line. But Josh, you have shared such good just wisdom and just examples and things of how y'all have seen this play out in your life. And I know that we are walking away encouraged by what you've shared today, and I know our listeners will too. And I know that we could probably keep talking to you for hours about this. So we'll just have to have you back again at some point.
That would be fun. I would love that.
We are going to wrap up today. And Josh, how we like to end our podcast is we like to leave our listeners with a question that they can take with them, ask their kids in the carpool line, ask them tonight at bedtime, wherever. And so we're going to wrap with that question. And that question for our listeners today is, what is one feeling to describe how you felt today?
Josh, thank you so much. Thanks for listening. We will see you guys next time.